China is a country with a controversial history and enormous potential. Its economic power is comparable to the economies of several developed European countries, and its manufacturing capabilities are almost limitless. Today, China is rightfully considered one of the most powerful countries in the world. But what is the basis of this success? The political system? The market economy? Or maybe its culture, rich history, and ancient traditions? Today, you will learn why there are two Chinas in the world. Is it possible to change the political situation in a country with umbrellas? Is it true that there are re-education camps in China? If so, what is going on there? We will compare the salaries in China, the United States, Russia, and other countries, and tell you about new technologies, electric cars, and their own internet. What does China have the death penalty for? Why did the United States start a trade war with China? And last but not least, how did the Chinese get out of poverty and conquer the world? Don't forget to like this episode and enjoy watching it. Let's go! In diplomatic documents or on political maps, you may encounter the designation PRC. This abbreviation stands for People's Republic of China. Sometimes you can hear the name Celestial Empire. Such a variety of names refers to the rich history of this state. The People's Republic of China was proclaimed only in 1949. But what was before it? The history of China is rich in various state formations. From monarchy to military dictatorships, the Sui, Tang, Yuan, Ming, and Qing empires, and the Republic of China. This is how this state was called at different times throughout 1,500 years. The term Celestial Empire was historically used to indicate China's special status among other countries. A reputation as discoverers of gunpowder and money gives them a certain arrogance. For centuries, Chinese emperors considered other nations barbarians and their own state the only corner of civilization. Eventually, this played a cruel joke on them. The second half of the 19th century was a time of decline for the Celestial Empire. Other powerful countries wanted to subjugate China, which had been a great market, but in military terms remained somewhere in the past century. The British began importing opium into the Celestial Empire, and by 1839, most of China's inhabitants were heavily addicted. Imperial decrees prohibiting the import of opium into the country were enacted to heal the population. This led to conflict with the British, who were losing tremendous profits due to such restrictions. This was followed by the First Opium War, and then another. The Qing Empire lost both wars and was humiliated by the barbarians. As a result of the Opium Wars, China lost important trading ports. Moreover, a part of the territory was taken over by the British and Russians. This may be the reason why modern China has introduced the death penalty for drug trafficking. In addition to drug trafficking, China imposes the death penalty for serious criminal offenses, large-scale fraud, corruption, and treason. It shows how crucial order and discipline are in the life of a society. In general, China has always been considered a pretty tough nation. But this is not because of the character of the nation, but rather because of necessity. For almost the entire 20th century, there was total chaos. Violence became the main way to eliminate political rivals. After the overthrow of the imperial dynasty, the nationalists seized power and ruled for a while. They almost defeated the communists. But then, in 1936, Japan decided to declare war on China. The nationalists realized they could not cope on their own and turned to the communists for support. As a result, the two parties stood together against a common enemy. But when the war ended, the struggle between the two parties continued, and the Communist Party won. The rest of the nationalists moved to the island of Taiwan, where they kept the name of the state and their political ideology. There are two Chinas in the world today: the People's Republic of China, ruled by the Communists, and the Republic of China, ruled by the descendants of those same nationalists. You've probably already heard about the need to reclaim Taiwan, but why has that territory never been taken over? It's a complicated matter. Taiwan was originally protected by Western countries, and over the years of economic development, Taiwan has become one of the most prosperous nations in the Asia-Pacific region, and an important player in the international high-tech arena. Today, the Republic of China is considered a partially recognized state, as only 11 small states and the Vatican have recognized its rights to independence. Nevertheless, the global community is well aware of Taiwan's economic importance. The small island is a world leader in producing semiconductors and microelectronics and develops integrated circuits for major IT companies. Apple, AMD, Nvidia, and other manufacturers buy component bases in Taiwan. But mainland China is also keeping up with its small neighbor. There are many large corporations in the Celestial Empire, which are known worldwide. We all know the online retailer, AliExpress, which belongs to the Alibaba Group. In 1999, former English teacher Jack Ma founded a small online marketplace to help small companies sell goods online. In 25 years, the online retailer has grown manifold, and its revenue reached $134 billion in 2023. Not bad for a former teacher, right? Another famous Chinese corporation, Huawei, was founded in 1987 by a former officer of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. With only 20,000 yuan in his pocket, he decided to import telephone switches from Hong Kong. Over the years, he realized that the endless customs clearance of the products was becoming more and more expensive. So, he hired technical specialists and started developing his own technology in China. Today, Huawei is one of the world's technological leaders, and it's all thanks to the decision not to import telephone switches from Hong Kong. Wait, but what's wrong with Hong Kong? It's part of China, right? Once again, this brings us back to the Opium Wars. Hong Kong was under British rule for a long time after the defeat of the Qing Empire in the First Opium War. In 1997, Hong Kong returned to the People's Republic of China, but not for nothing, but with an important condition. Hong Kong was granted full political, legal, and economic autonomy until 2047. To make everything go smoothly and without conflicts, the Chinese Communist Party had to agree to the concept: one country, two systems. And that's the result. Now there is a small corner of China with its own currency, an independent judicial system based on British law, and even direct elections. It's an interesting precedent, but not everything is as smooth as it may seem. Starting in 2010, the Chinese government began to gradually increase its control over Hong Kong. The Communist Party started interfering in the city government elections, which led to the Umbrella Revolution in 2014. For 79 days, there have been demonstrations of thousands of Hong Kong residents. People demanded free elections. They armed themselves with umbrellas to resist water cannons, which the Chinese police actively used against the protesters. These events were dubbed the Umbrella Revolution. However, the protesters failed to achieve their goals. Since 2020, the central government has made several successful legislative attempts to limit the autonomy of Hong Kong. Thus, with the help of new bills, it managed to get rid of Western media, reduce the number of elected seats in the city assembly, and ban rallies and demonstrations using the pretext of fighting the coronavirus. Now, Hong Kong is no longer as autonomous as it was. However, the People's Republic of China has much worse zones where control over the personal lives of citizens has reached its peak. The Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region is a vivid example. It is no secret that China is a multi-ethnic state, and in places with many different regions, there are also different cultures, traditions, customs, and religions. There are 56 different nationalities living in China, each with its own culture and traditions. In this diversity, there are always those who are disadvantaged in one way or another. In China, the Uyghurs who practice Islam have suffered such a fate. Basically, the Uyghurs are on the periphery of the Asian cultural space, closer to the Central Asian peoples. At different times, the territories where they lived were given a high level of autonomy, or almost became independent. To keep them under control, the Chinese authorities created the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. And now, the most interesting part. There are re-education camps in this area. Here, the authorities are watching every move people make. There are observation towers and fences around the buildings, and all settlements are equipped with high-resolution cameras. It's very easy to get into this camp. The government sends citizens there without any trial, simply on the basis of ethnicity or religion. Currently, despite the protests of international organizations, including the UN, there are at least 1 million Chinese Muslims living in the Xinjiang-Uyghur Autonomous Region, a terrible policy inside the country, and many territorial contradictions should have seriously affected the foreign political activity of the state. But things are not so simple here either. Even though China sometimes violates international human rights norms, the state has a great reputation in the world. After World War II, the Republic of China, which is now Taiwan, was among the winners and became one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. However, Communist China, having won the Civil War, took Taiwan's seats on the United Nations Security Council. Because of its status, China can ban any decision of the United Nations during the review by the Security Council. It is a powerful political tool that allows it to exert great influence on the world stage. Today, even with its diplomatic resources, China minimally expresses its position on any issues that do not involve its interests. And this is a relatively effective policy that does not lead to enmity with any alliance. China only shows firmness when it comes to its territories. Otherwise, it achieves its results with other tools, economic ones. China has become a magnet for investors from all over the world thanks to its enormous labor force, domestic political stability, and neutral stance on international issues. This allowed China to become the largest exporter of various goods, ranging from toothpicks to the most powerful computer systems. So, if China is the largest supplier of goods in the world, then the wages of its citizens must be high, right? Well, not always. If we look at the average wages of the Chinese and compare them with other countries, we get some interesting results. In 2023, the average salary of a Chinese employee, after paying basic taxes, was about $1,500. In the United States, it's $4,000. In Germany, it is $3,000. In Mexico, $730. And in Russia, $750. And it's important to understand that the prices for housing, groceries, and services are different in the countries. Thus, where there is more income, everything is more expensive. In addition, we need to take into account the difference in exchange rates and many other factors. But why does the average Chinese citizen earn much less than an American? That's where the demographic situation comes into play. China is home to almost 1.5 billion people, and the incomes are different. When calculating average income, the total number of working people with different incomes is invariably taken into account. However, in order for incomes to increase, it is important to develop the country's economy. The Chinese government realizes that intransigence in international politics leads to sanctions that can slow GDP growth. What is GDP? Let me explain. Gross domestic product measures the economic activity of a country, showing the total value of all goods and services produced during a certain period. Today, China is the world leader in terms of GDP. That is, in terms of the total value of all goods and services produced by the state. According to the World Bank, in 2023, China's GDP was $34 trillion. The United States was second, followed by India in third place. These top 3 countries produce almost 41% of the world's goods and services. But even despite its leading position in the GDP ranking, it is not yet possible to call China the world's first economy, as there are many other important indicators in which the Celestial Empire has not yet achieved primacy. Industry and construction represent a significant part of China's GDP, but the service sector is also developing rapidly. And what about China's high technology? You know, artificial intelligence and everything like that. There's a lot of interesting stuff here, too. China is a pioneer in the introduction of 5G communication standards. At the end of March 2024, China Mobile announced the launch of the first commercial 5G network. For ordinary users, the transition to the new communications standard will not be so noticeable. But for business and industry, it's a major step forward. The launch of a commercial 5G network will improve geolocation accuracy, which will stimulate the development of unmanned cars and autonomous robots. In addition, a noticeable increase in data transmission speeds will open up new opportunities for artificial intelligence. The automobile industry is another important field. In recent years, Chinese cars have begun to actively conquer global markets. You probably wonder what this has to do with high technology. The answer is electric cars. China is the largest producer of electric vehicles in the world. Thanks to the government support of the environmental agenda, the country is developing the domestic market for electric cars and increasing their production for export. Here's an interesting fact. At the end of 2023, the Chinese company BYD became the largest manufacturer of electric vehicles, providing 22% of the global market in this segment. For comparison, Elon Musk's more popular company Tesla has only 13% of the global production of electric cars. Other countries appreciate China's strong economy, technological progress, and neutral stance in international affairs, and try not to wake the sleeping dragon unnecessarily, fearing a reduction in the supply of low-cost goods. The only state China has contradictions with again and again is the United States, which, after winning the Cold War, is very sensitive to the status of a world leader. In 2018, the United States started a trade war with China over a huge trade deficit of more than $375 billion. Trade deficit? What is that? Let me explain with a simple example. Pretend to be the headman of a small settlement whose inhabitants are engaged in farming. You produce apples, potatoes, beets, carrots, and even gooseberries. After harvesting, you keep some of the produce and take the rest to the city to sell it. With the earnings, you buy building materials to build new houses and attract settlers. But every season, the building materials become more expensive. In addition, city dwellers are not so eager to buy your fruits and vegetables at the market because, besides you, other settlements trade with the city too. You have to go to the city not only with groceries, but also with money to buy building materials in the same quantity as before. Building your own building materials factory is not an option. You simply do not have that many people and resources, so you have to make additional purchases in the city, spending the funds of your settlers. Actually, this is the trade deficit, a situation where, for one reason or another, the country has to buy more goods than it sells. This is exactly what happened in the United States. The trade deficit was just an excuse for numerous measures and restrictions aimed at protecting the domestic market and its producers from Chinese goods. For several years in a row, China and the USA exchanged tariff increases on imported goods and targeted sanctions on specific companies until everything came to its logical conclusion. To balance the U.S. trade deficit, China had to increase its purchases of American goods and services by $200 billion. This episode illustrates, once again, that at this stage, stable economic development is more important for China than external political conflicts. A strong economy is the key to the power of any state. The success of China's political tranquility and strong economic development is summed up in the phrase, socialism with Chinese characteristics. In the People's Republic of China, the state occupies a very interesting position, being both the main customer and the main driver of the market economy. How did this happen? It's all the fault of just one man, Deng Xiaoping. When the communists won in China in 1949, the country began to develop following the example of the Soviet Union. But state control of the economy led to big problems: food shortages, poverty, and political instability. It even got to the point where the Chinese had to import live sparrows because they eliminated all the sparrows they had. In 1976, the permanent leader of the nation died, and a group of reformers led by Deng Xiaoping came to power. Realizing that China was in a miserable state from the effects of the planned economy, the new leaders began a grand transformation. First thing the reformers did was allow private farms to decide what to produce and in what quantity. This was a big step forward because previously everything was handled by the government. It didn't take long for the result to show. Agriculture became more productive and people had food on the table. Then the reformers opened China to foreign trade and foreign investment. Special economic zones began to appear in the country, where foreign companies could build factories and create jobs on favorable terms. This gave a powerful boost to the economy. Another important reform was the encouragement of private enterprise. People could start their own businesses, and the more such businesses appeared, the faster the economy developed. These reforms were like a magic wand that helped China to rise up and start developing rapidly. In the 3 decades since the 1980s, China has gone from a backward agrarian country to an economic giant. But the locomotive of reform did not stop there. In the 1990s, the country began a large-scale redistribution of state-owned enterprises. More and more large civilian factories were transferred into the hands of entrepreneurs. The state retained only the most important sectors of the economy, such as energy, metallurgy, telecommunications, and the military-industrial complex. And of course, the most important achievement of the Chinese economy and diplomacy was the country's accession to the World Trade Organization, which allowed the Celestial Empire to be more active in the international market. Today, China is the second largest economy in the world, but it has all the capabilities and resources to become the first. The country is eagerly introducing innovative technologies and automating business processes, increasing the well-being of the country and the population. The Chinese government policy contributes to the development of domestic demand in China. It so happens that most Chinese people cannot access services like Instagram, Telegram, or WhatsApp. You're probably wondering how they live without all this stuff. The answer is simple. They have WeChat. WeChat is a Chinese super app that combines the functions of a messenger, social network, payment service, and many other tools. What is interesting is that the main Chinese app has such a wide functionality and popularity that it has become a substitute for many foreign services. The Chinese government is very concerned about protecting its citizens from foreign influence, so the country has special restrictive rules for many foreign internet services. The Great Firewall, or as it is also called, the Golden Shield Project, was launched in the late 1990s. The purpose of the project is to manage and filter internet traffic and to restrict access to unwanted or banned content from abroad. But despite its restrictions, China is moving forward at a breakneck speed. Its successes confirm that if there is a clear strategy and the will to change, incredible results can be achieved. This endeavor, started by Deng Xiaoping, is now being continued by Xi Jinping. But what happens when there is no strategy? Or it fails? This is Herbert Hoover, a man whose name has become a symbol of disaster. He became President of the United States in 1929, and over the next 4 years, America plunged into the hell of the Great Depression, an economic crisis of such severity that jobs and money became increasingly rare. Because of this, many historians describe Herbert Hoover as one of the worst presidents in the history of the United States. But who is the worst? We will reveal this in the next episodes. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it.